We trust toys in a way we trust almost nothing else. We give them to our children, the most vulnerable among us, without question. We let them into our beds, our homes, our memories. But toys have never been neutral. They've been vehicles for ideology, weapons of propaganda, instruments of capitalism, racism, and war. Some were designed to maim, others to indoctrinate. And the most disturbing part? Most of us have no idea. This is not a story about evil corporations. This isn't about negligence, though there's plenty. This is about how the toys we loved, the toys we remember, were often designed with purposes far darker than play. And some of them are still in your attic. Let's begin where it all started, in the ashes of a war that never really ended. The year is 1869, 4 years after the Civil War ended. America is in what historians call Reconstruction, but that word suggests something was being built. In truth, something else was being built, a systematic dehumanization that would last another century. And it started in the nursery. The toy was called the Jolly N-Word Bank, manufactured by the J&E Stevens Company in Cromwell, Connecticut. Here's how it worked. A mechanical cast-iron bank about 7 inches tall, a grotesque caricature of a black man, enormous red lips, bulging white eyes, raggedy clothes. You'd place a coin in his hand, pull a lever, and the figure would perform for you. His eyes would roll back. His mouth would spring open impossibly wide. The coin would disappear inside, and white children would clap with delight. This wasn't a fringe product from some backwater workshop. J&E Stevens was one of America's premier toy manufacturers. Their mechanical banks are now collector's items worth thousands of dollars. They made dozens of variations: the Darky and the Watermelon, the Freedman's Bank, Tammany Bank, featuring racist Irish caricatures. But the Jolly Bank was the most popular. In 1869, the 14th Amendment had just granted citizenship to formerly enslaved people. White America, particularly in the North, which liked to think of itself as the savior, was grappling with a terrifying question. What now? And rather than face that question honestly, they did what humans have always done. They created stories. They told themselves that black people were childlike, simple, entertaining, objects of amusement. The toys reinforced the lie. Imagine you're a mother in 1875, walking through a shop in Boston. Your son's birthday is coming up. You see this bank on the shelf, gleaming, intricate, mechanical. The shopkeeper demonstrates it for you, teaches them to save their pennies, he says with a smile. And it's quite amusing. You don't see hatred. You see a clever toy. You see a way to teach your child financial responsibility. You buy it. You bring it home. Your son loves it. These banks weren't just in white homes. They were in banks, actual financial institutions, in hotels, in restaurants, displayed proudly as decoration. One surviving catalog from 1884 shows that the Jolly Bank outsold nearly every other mechanical bank that year. Thousands were made. Thousands were sold. Thousands of children grew up with them. For nearly 100 years, no one said anything. Not publicly, not in any way that mattered. Black activists and intellectuals protested. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote about racist imagery in 1903. The NAACP condemned these items in 1920, but white America didn't listen. These banks stayed in homes, passed down through generations, until the civil rights movement in 1960s. Today, you can find these banks in museums, behind glass, with carefully worded placards explaining historical context. And I've stood in front of those displays, watching people's faces. Some are horrified. Some are defensive. It was a different time. Some take photos. But perhaps you're thinking, that was over a century ago. We've evolved. Let me tell you about a doll from the 1990s. A doll you might have owned. In 1959, Mattel releases Barbie. She's blonde, impossibly proportioned, and becomes the best-selling doll in American history. Flash forward to 1967. Mattel releases Colored Francie, Barbie's friend. She has the exact same face mold as White Francie. Same features, same structure, just painted brown. This wasn't diversity. This was lazy tokenism. Mattel literally took a white doll and changed the paint color. No consideration of different hair textures, facial features, cultural authenticity. But here's where it gets insidious. In the 1990s, researchers started noticing something strange. Black Barbies cost less than white Barbies. Sometimes $1 less. Sometimes $5. Walmart executives, when pressed, claimed it was supply and demand. Black dolls didn't sell as well, so they were discounted. But think about what that teaches a black child browsing the toy aisle. Your doll is worth less. You are worthless. In 2019, a woman named Deidre tweeted about her experience growing up in Detroit in the 80s. I remember being 7 years old, begging my mom for a Barbie. We got to the store, and she picked up the black one. I cried. I wanted the blonde one, the one from the commercials. My mom looked at me and said, "This is the one that looks like you." I said, "I know. That's why I don't want her." Deidre is now 41 years old. She has a daughter, and she says she still thinks about that moment, about what it meant that she hated the doll that looked like her. To Mattel's credit, they've made enormous strides. In 2016, they released Barbies with different body types, skin tones, wheelchairs. But here's the question that lingers. Why did it take 50 years? 50 years of black girls internalizing that beauty looked white. But racist toys weren't always subtle. Sometimes they were explicit. Sometimes they were government sanctioned. Let's travel to South Africa. 1970. If you're not familiar with apartheid, here's what you need to know. From 1948 to 1994, South Africa operated under a system of racial segregation so comprehensive, so totalitarian, that it classified every single person by race at birth. White, colored, Indian, Bantu, where you could live, work, love, eat, swim, or learn, all determined by that classification. And the system knew, if you want to maintain this for generations, you can't just enforce it through law. You have to teach it. The dolls had no single brand name. They were made by various manufacturers across South Africa, with government approval and sometimes subsidy. Here's what made them insidious. White dolls, porcelain faces, detailed features, blonde or brown hair, dressed in school uniforms or Sunday dresses. They came with tiny books, tea sets, miniature furniture. Black dolls, crude cloth bodies, painted faces, exaggerated features, dressed in maid uniforms, or bare minimum clothing. No accessories. No stories. The white dolls were characters. The black dolls were objects. But it went deeper than just toys for sale. The South African government distributed dolls to schools as educational materials. Teachers used them in lessons about different peoples and natural social order. One surviving curriculum guide from 1973, found in archives after apartheid fell, includes this actual text. The Bantu doll can be used to demonstrate appropriate social roles. Children should understand that different peoples have different capabilities and purposes. Let that sink in. This was official, sanctioned, educational. In 2010, a woman named Thandi was interviewed for a documentary about apartheid. She was 61 years old, had lived through the entire era. She remembered being 6 in a missionary school and the white teacher bringing out 2 dolls. She held up the white doll and said, "This is Mary. Mary is smart and clean and good." Then she held up the black doll and said, "This is Sarah. Sarah helps Mary. Sarah is strong for work." Thandi pauses in the interview. Then she says, "I went home that day and asked my mother why God made me Sarah instead of Mary. I was 6, and I already understood that I was born less. But this wasn't just about harming black children. It was about shaping white children too. A white South African man named Peter, interviewed in 2015, remembered growing up in Pretoria. I had a black doll as a kid. We called her the maid doll. She lived in the toy house's servants' quarters. Yes, our toy houses had servants' quarters. And I remember thinking that was just normal, how things were. It wasn't until I was in my 30s, traveling abroad, that I realized how profoundly that shaped my worldview. When apartheid fell in 1994, there was no organized recall of these dolls, no public burning. Many families simply threw them away, buried them in attics, donated them to thrift stores, but some kept them. In 2018, a museum in Johannesburg opened an exhibit called The Toys That Taught Hate. These dolls were the centerpiece. The curator, a woman named Namsa, said this: "People ask me why we don't just destroy these. Why preserve objects of trauma? And I tell them, because forgetting is more dangerous than remembering. These dolls are evidence. Evidence that cruelty can be packaged as childhood innocence. Now, maybe you're American or European, and you're thinking, this was apartheid South Africa. We would never do that. Are you sure? Because I need to tell you about a toy that was in American homes, in British homes, in homes across the Western world, for over 100 years. In 1895, Florence Kate Upton, a British-American illustrator, publishes a children's book called The Adventures of Two Dutch Dolls and the Golliwog. The character, spelled with two G's initially, is described as a horrid sight, the blackest gnome. He has jet black skin, wild frizzy hair, exaggerated white eyes, and massive red lips. The books become wildly popular. By 1900, Golliwog dolls are being mass-produced. By 1910, they're in toy stores across England, America, Australia, and Europe. Here's what makes the Golliwog different from earlier racist toys. It was beloved. Children didn't see it as a caricature. They saw it as a character, a friend. Enid Blyton, one of Britain's most famous children's authors, featured Golliwog characters in her naughty books, published into the 1960s and read by millions. Robertson's Jam, a British brand of marmalades, used a Golliwog as their mascot from 1910 to 2001. They ran a promotion for decades. Collect tokens from jam jars, mail them in, receive a Golliwog pin. They made different versions. Golliwog musicians, Golliwog athletes. People collected them obsessively. In 2001, when Robertsons finally discontinued the Golliwog, there was outrage. Not shame, outrage. Collectors protested, wrote angry letters. One woman interviewed by the BBC said, "I've been collecting these since I was a girl. They're not racist. They're cheerful, happy." She had 47 Golliwog pins displayed in her kitchen. When the interviewer asked if she understood why black people found them offensive, she said, "Well, I suppose, but they're just toys. Even now, in 2025, you can still buy Golliwog dolls. Not in major stores, but online. At antique markets, Etsy, eBay, sellers list them as vintage, collectible, nostalgic memorabilia. Some have reviews. Bought this for my granddaughter. I had one just like it growing up. Beautiful craftsmanship. A piece of history." And occasionally, rarely, "Why is this allowed to be sold?" But racism wasn't the only poison hidden in the toy box. Sometimes, the goal wasn't just dehumanization and indoctrination. Let's talk about how toys became soldiers. Berlin, 1938. Europe is on the brink of war, but inside Germany, the Nazi Party has already won a different kind of war, the war for children's minds. Adolf Hitler understood something fundamental. Adults are hard to change. Their beliefs are calcified. But children? Children are clay. And the Nazis were master sculptors. The board game was called Juden Raus. It means Jews out. Published in 1938 by Gunther & Co., a Dresden-based game manufacturer. Here's how it played. The board depicted a German town with 6 Jewish figures scattered throughout. Each player had a colored piece representing a Nazi officer. You'd roll dice, move through the town, and collect Jewish figures. Your goal was to be the first to remove all your assigned Jews from the town and deposit them outside the city gates. At a space marked Nach Palästina, to Palestine, the player who deported the most Jews won. The box showed caricatured Jewish figures with hooked noses, payat, and sinister expressions, fleeing from smiling, heroic-looking Nazi figures. The tagline on the box, "Exciting game for young and old." 1938 wasn't early Nazi Germany. This was after the Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of citizenship. After the night of broken glass, when synagogues burned and Jewish businesses were destroyed. This wasn't propaganda building toward something. This was propaganda during the persecution, and it was marketed to children as young as 5. Imagine, and I know this is uncomfortable, but imagine you're a German parent in 1938. You're not a Nazi party member. Maybe you're uncomfortable with the direction things are going, but you're also scared. You have children to protect. You see this game in a shop. The shopkeeper recommends it. Very popular, he says. Educational. Teaches them about the Jewish question. You hesitate. But your son's birthday is coming up. And you think, maybe if I buy this, the neighbors will see. Maybe it will keep us safe. Maybe it will keep my family out of trouble. So you buy it. You bring it home. You watch your children play it. And you tell yourself it's just a game. In 2005, a German historian named Dr. Klaus Müller tracked down 7 people, elderly who remembered playing Juden Raus as children. Only 2 agreed to be interviewed. 1, a woman named Greta, was 83. She wept through most of the interview. I remember thinking it was fun, she said. We laughed when we won. We called the Jewish pieces the rats, even though the game didn't tell us to. We just did. After the war, after we learned what happened in the camps, I couldn't reconcile it, that I had laughed, that it was fun. Most copies were destroyed after the war. Allied forces burned Nazi propaganda materials by the ton, but some survived. About 12 known copies exist today, held in museums and private collections. In 2011, one sold at auction for $17,000. The museum that purchased it issued a statement. We acquire such objects not to glorify, but to educate, to show what happens when hatred is normalized, when cruelty becomes play. But Nazi Germany wasn't the only regime to weaponize toys. They weren't even the last. Let's jump forward in 1950. World War II is over. The atomic age has begun. America is obsessed with nuclear power. It's in movies, in advertisements, in medicine. Radiation is seen as miraculous, modern, the key to the future. And in 1950, the A.C. Gilbert Company decides to capitalize on this obsession. They release the Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab. This wasn't a toy in the traditional sense. It was a legitimate scientific instrument kit. The box was beautiful, with dramatic text, produces awe-inspiring sights, enables you to actually see the paths of electrons and alpha particles traveling at speeds of more than 10,000 miles per second. Inside the kit was a Geiger counter, an electroscope, a spinthariscope, a device to view radiation, a cloud chamber to visualize radioactive decay, 4 samples of uranium ore, 4 samples of other radioactive materials, and a 60-page instruction manual titled How to Prospect for Uranium. The price, $49.50, about $600 in today's money. The target age, 10 and up. The advertisements were extraordinary. They showed boys in crew cuts, wearing white shirts and ties, peering into the cloud chamber like junior scientists. This new Gilbert lab will thrill you. Observe the mysterious cloud chamber. See atoms split to smithereens. Make your own discoveries in radioactivity. Another ad showed a father and son, side by side, examining uranium ore. The tagline, "Science adventures await." In 1950, nuclear energy wasn't scary yet. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were over, and the prevailing narrative was that atomic power had ended the war. It was a force for peace. Radiation was in everything. Radium watch dials that glowed green. Health tonics claiming radioactive water cured ailments. Shoe stores had X-ray machines, so you could see your foot bones while trying on shoes. To a parent in 1950, this kit wasn't dangerous. It was sophisticated, educational, a way to give your child a head start in the scientific field of the future. I've read the manual. It's chilling in its earnestness. There are experiments like watch radioactive disintegration, measure the half-life of radioactive isotopes, use the Geiger counter to search for uranium in your backyard. And then, buried on page 47, a single sentence. The radioactive samples in this kit emit alpha and beta particles. Handle with care. That's it. No mention of long-term exposure risks. No warnings about contamination. No discussion of cancer. The kit was on shelves for exactly 1 year, 1950 to 1951. Then, quietly, it vanished. No recall, no press release. Gilbert simply stopped manufacturing it. The official explanation was poor sales. But that doesn't hold up. It was a premium product with strong initial demand. The real reason appears to be that someone, likely within the Atomic Energy Commission, finally asked the uncomfortable question: should children be handling uranium? How many kids own this kit? How many spent hours in their basement, handling radioactive materials with their bare hands? How many breathed in particles from the cloud chamber? Cancer from radiation exposure can take 20, 30, 40 years to develop. And in the 1950s, no one was tracking which children owned which toys. So if someone who played with the Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab developed leukemia in 1985, there'd be no way to trace it back. No way to prove causation. No accountability. Today, these kits are highly collectible. A complete set in good condition can sell for $8,000 or more, and they're still radioactive. The uranium ore doesn't decay significantly in 70 years. So collectors who buy these kits, hoping to display them, to own a piece of atomic history, are buying active radioactive material. Most don't realize it until they test it. The Gilbert Atomic Energy Lab was dangerous because of ignorance. But what about toys where the danger was obvious? Where people knew and sold them anyway? Imagine this. It's summer 1985, suburban America. You're at a backyard barbecue. The adults are drinking beer, flipping burgers. The kids are playing on the lawn. Someone brings out a game. Lawn darts, also called jarts. They're large, weighted darts with metal tips. You throw them into the air toward a plastic ring on the ground. The closest to the ring wins. Sounds harmless, right? Now imagine this. A dart weighing 1 pound, thrown 30 feet into the air. Gravity accelerates it downward. By the time it lands, the metal tip is traveling with 23,000 pounds of force per square inch. That's enough to puncture a car hood. Now imagine it hitting a child's skull. Lawn darts were fundamentally dangerous. This wasn't a manufacturing defect. This wasn't user error. The entire concept, throwing heavy, pointed projectiles into the air in uncontrolled environments, was lethal. And everyone knew it. The first recorded lawn dart death was in 1970. A child named Brian in California. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, took note. In 1970, they issued a warning. In 1975, they issued another warning. In 1978, they managed to get lawn darts banned from toy sections of stores, but only for children under 18. They could still be sold as adult games in sporting goods sections. The manufacturers argued, it's the parents' responsibility to supervise. And the CPSC, underfunded and overwhelmed, let it slide. Between 1978 and 1986, Lawn darts sent over 6,000 people to emergency rooms. 3/4 were children under 15. The injuries were catastrophic. Skull fractures, brain damage, punctured organs, severed arteries. But no one died. Not yet. So the manufacturers kept selling. April 19, 1987. Riverside, California. 7-year-old Michelle Snow is playing in her backyard with her dolls. Next door, her 9-year-old brother and his friends are playing lawn darts in their yard. A fence separates the two properties. One of the boys throws a dart. It goes higher than intended. It clears the fence. Michelle doesn't see it coming. The dart strikes her in the head. Michelle's father, David Snow, races her to the hospital. The doctors work for 3 days, but the dart punctured her skull, penetrated her brain. The damage is catastrophic. On April 22nd, Michelle Snow dies. David Snow doesn't grieve quietly. He's an aerospace engineer, analytical, methodical, and he's furious. He starts researching. He discovers the injury statistics, the previous death, the CPSC's failed attempts at regulation. He realizes his daughter's death was preventable, and he decides to make sure she's the last. David Snow begins a crusade. He writes to the CPSC. They respond with bureaucratic sympathy and no action. He writes to his congressman. The response is polite and useless. He writes to newspapers. A few local stories run. Nothing changes. So he decides to go bigger. He contacts 60 Minutes. In December 1987, 60 Minutes runs a segment on lawn darts. They interview David Snow. He's composed, articulate, devastated. Then he holds up a lawn dart. "This killed my daughter," he says. And it's still being sold to anyone for $19.99. The public response is immediate. Thousands of letters pour into the CPSC. Retailers start pulling lawn darts from shelves voluntarily. And finally, the CPSC takes action. On December 19, 1988, lawn darts are banned completely in the United States. Not just for children, for everyone. Sales, manufacturing, import are all illegal. David Snow achieved his goal. But Michelle was still gone. But even now, nearly 40 years after the ban, you can still find lawn darts. Garage sales, estate sales, people who kept them in their attic. And shockingly, on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, sellers list them as vintage, collectible, rare. In 2017, a Canadian woman was killed by a lawn dart at a backyard party. The dart that killed her was from the 1980s. Someone had kept it. Michelle Snow's story is about obvious danger ignored. But what about toys where the danger was invisible? In 1971, Remco Toys releases a new doll for the Christmas season. Her name is Baby Laugh-A-Lot. This is a battery-powered doll that giggles when you press her stomach. Simple and innocent. At least, that's what they thought. The commercial is what made it infamous. It opens on a white screen. Then, slowly, a little girl appears, holding the doll. She presses its stomach. The doll begins to laugh. And the laughter is wrong. The little girl in the commercial laughs too, but there's something in her eyes. Something that looks almost like fear. The camera zooms in on the doll's face. The laughter builds to a crescendo. Then, abruptly, silence. Cut to black. Product card. Baby Laugh-A-Lot by Remco. The commercial aired during children's programming. Parents across America watched their kids' reactions. Some children were delighted. Some were confused. And some started crying. Within weeks, newspapers started receiving letters. "My daughter won't sleep in her room anymore since she saw that commercial. That doll's laugh is nightmare fuel." But here's the thing. The controversy sold these dolls. Remco knew exactly what they were doing. The marketing team had tested the doll extensively. They knew it was unsettling. But in 1971, Children's advertising was becoming more competitive. To stand out, you needed to be memorable. And nothing is more memorable than discomfort. The commercial worked because parents remembered it, talked about it, showed it to friends. And when Christmas shopping came around, they thought, well, maybe it's not that bad in person. And they bought it. The actual doll was somehow worse than the commercial. The laughing mechanism was poorly calibrated. Sometimes it would stop abruptly. Sometimes it would keep going long after you released the button. And because it was battery-powered with 1971 technology, the batteries would wear down slowly, meaning the laughter would gradually become slower, deeper, and distorted. One mother wrote to a toy magazine in 1972, "My daughter's baby laugh-a-lot battery is dying, and now it sounds like a demon. The laugh is slow and warped. She asked me to take it out of her room, but I can still hear it from the closet sometimes. It laughs on its own. I think the mechanism is faulty, but I'm afraid to check." Turns out, many baby laugh-a-lot dolls did have faulty mechanisms. Remco never issued a recall. But by 1973, Baby Laugh-A-Lot was quietly discontinued. Today, Baby Laugh-A-Lot is a cult object. Mint condition dolls sell for $300 to $500 on eBay. But here's what's truly strange. Many people who owned the doll as children remember loving it. So here's my question for you. How many toys in your childhood were like that? Toys that, looking back, should have terrified you, but didn't. Because you were a child. And children accept what they're given. Children trust. And that trust is what makes the next story so unforgivable. In 2001, MGA Entertainment releases Bratz dolls. They're the anti-Barbie. Heavy makeup, pouty lips, streetwear fashion, attitude. The tagline was, "The only girls with a passion for fashion." They become massively successful, eventually outselling Barbie in some markets. But from the beginning, there's controversy. Critics argue that Bratz dolls sexualize young girls. The dolls are dressed in miniskirts, fishnet stockings, and crop tops. Their makeup is heavy, thick eyeliner, glossy lips. The American Psychological Association releases a report in 2007 linking early sexualization in toys to body image issues, eating disorders, and low self-esteem in young girls. Parent groups call for boycotts. The manufacturer argues that Bratz are about empowerment. These dolls represent girls who are confident, fashionable, independent. And millions of girls agree. They don't see sexualization. They see dolls that look cool, edgy, different from the perfect pink Barbie world. Both sides are right. Bratz dolls are empowering to many girls. And they do contribute to early sexualization. These things can coexist. And that's what makes modern toy controversies so difficult. There's no clear villain. Right now, in 2025, there are toys on shelves that will one day be seen as harmful. We just don't know which ones yet. Maybe it's the AI-powered dolls that listen to children's conversations. Maybe it's the hyper-realistic baby dolls that cry real tears and need to be fed. Maybe it's the video games that use gambling mechanics to hook young minds. Or maybe it's something we don't even see as problematic yet. Just like parents in 1950 didn't see danger in uranium. Just like parents in 1870 didn't see racism in mechanical banks. That's the power of toys. They're not just playthings. They're teachers. They shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see the world. So now when you walk past that toy box, when you see that doll on the shelf, when you remember the toy you loved most as a child, ask yourself, what are we teaching the children who come next?